Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Love it when you can give a-hole landlords a big middle finger and be completely within your legal rights to do so. I love that they had to list it for lower than what they were going to try to get from you. I hope the next renters made their lives hell. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Sign to continue lease. I've lurked here for a long time and never thought of something I could post, but remembered this gem from about 14 years ago. This starts when my now wife and I decided to move in together and rent a house. We were in our early 20s, it was our first time renting, and we had fairly low income, so our options were limited. Luckily, we found a place that was in a less desirable area but had recently had some basic renovations. We signed a lease and life went on. Our first 12 months went by with a rental inspection from the agent every 3 months or so. Never got any feedback, and being new to renting, figured everything was okay. We had a couple items that needed repairing in that time, so I met the landlord and got his details for organizing repairs. He seemed like a decent bloke, probably early 40s, reasonably handy, and did some repairs himself. The first year went by, the lease came to an end, they increased the price, and we signed on for another 12 months. Then it happened. About 2 months later, the agent came to inspect along with the landlord's wife. The wife turned her nose up at absolutely everything and made a number of insulting comments about our furniture when she thought I couldn't hear. We got an inspection report after that, gave us a huge list of items to rectify and 2 weeks to do it, or they'd initiate proceedings to evict us. Naturally, after never hearing any feedback from any other inspections, we were shocked. The items were mostly minor nitpicks, with the worst things being to move our cats outdoors, clean the oven, and poison weeds on the path in the backyard. We were fine copping it on the chin and doing what they asked, except for the cats. Initially, when signing the lease, it said no pets, but we requested and got acceptance for our indoor-only cats. It was noted on the lease, but not on the copy I had. I was kicking myself for not having it in writing and knew I had no chance if they wanted to push the point. So I called the landlord rather than talking through the agent. He explained that tenants in the other house they owned had been using it as a lab and the agents had never picked up on it. So when they found out his wife insisted on going along to our inspection, hence why we got a bad report. I talked it out with him, and although he was very patronizing towards me, he agreed we could keep the cats inside as long as we kept everything clean and the next reports went fine. So we did as they asked, and they increased the inspections from once every 3 months to once a month, which is the minimum period they're allowed. We had a list of things to fix after every inspection. It made our life hell. We felt like intruders in our own home. We grew to hate living there, and it put a strain on our relationship. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, my father passed away around that time, so I ended up with inheritance money from his super fund and the sale of his house. My wife and I used the inheritance as a deposit to buy a house of our own, sorted out a loan agreement, and found a place we liked. Now, this is where I finally got my chance to repay them for making us feel like indentured servants that only existed to vacuum carpets and scrub walls in our home. By some miracle of luck, I negotiated the settlement date for our new house to be 1 week before our lease was due to end. This meant that we wouldn't have to break contract and be stuck footing the bill while they found new tenants. Better yet, they sent me a letter saying our lease was due to end and included a new lease agreement with a large jump in rent. The letter said we had to either sign the new lease and send it back to them by a date that was 2 weeks before end of lease, or consider the contract ended, move out by the end of the lease term, and hand over the keys. It said nothing about telling them we didn't want to renew the lease, so I didn't. I didn't want them booking open inspections and intrude further on our lives to show the place to new tenants, and decided they didn't deserve extra notice. The days ticked by, a couple weeks passed, and my wife and I were busy getting ready to move. I didn't get contacted by the agent again until my phone rang 1 week after the new paperwork was due, literally the day before we were moving out. It was the agent, of course. They greeted me nicely and said it was just a reminder that we needed to sign the new lease and get it back to them. I told them, "Oh, we aren't signing it. We bought a house and we're moving out tomorrow." The other end of the line went dead silent for a good few seconds while my face got stuck in a grin The agent quietly asked why we hadn't told them, and I said the paperwork only said to let them know if we were extending the lease, nothing about moving out, so I assumed they knew. She said goodbye pretty quickly, and the panic in her voice was glorious. She was screwed and knew it. I wish I got to hear more of the fallout, but my wife and I moved out, cleaned the house over the remaining week, and I handed the keys over. They never booked any open inspections in that final week, so the house sat empty for a while waiting on new tenants, and the landlords missed out on some rent payments. We also checked the listings and saw they advertised it at a lower price than what they were going to gouge us for. As a bonus, a couple days after the lease ended, the agent called me and said our contact stated we had to have the carpet steam cleaned, and they were going to take the cost from our bond. I told her we'd had them steam cleaned, and she said we didn't. The carpet smelled like garbage. After me telling her again we had, she demanded a copy of the receipt. I emailed it through and never heard from them again. I didn't mention that there was a cavity under the house and a couple of bags of rubbish I chucked under there as we were moving out because the bins were full. I guess the floor wasn't airtight. And our second story. Is that going to be a problem? Background. I'm a security officer for a very large call center building in the Northwest. This building holds 3 companies. The companies would remind you of Just Do It, Billy Gates, and tax software. I have a lot of employees to watch over, and almost all of them are crapheads. The building's fairly advanced in technology and requires all employees to badge in and out of every single door in the place. I monitor 45 cameras, 2 large parking lots, and every single other type of access control you can think of. The short story, this company has the required handicap accommodations you would expect from a large business, a bunch of handicap parking spots, button-activated doors, dual elevator access, and even separate dedicated bathrooms both downstairs and upstairs. I do not discriminate against anyone needing handicap assistance. I'm a great guy and do my part for not only my job but society. I help out as much as I can, as professionally as I can. This doesn't mean that I can't smell your bullcrap a mile away. In walks, I guess I should say limps, because she legitimately limps to me, Entitled B, EB. She made her way down from the second story to then come into contact with the rear employee exit doors and refuse to use the handicap button. So as I'm sitting there monitoring the cameras and badge logs, she's grunting extremely loud, on purpose mind you, and putting all of her body weight into the door to get it to open. Normally in this case, I can get up to help the employee open the door, but she already had it halfway open and was making her way into my office by the time I sat up. Here comes the ridiculous conversation. EB, those doors are absolutely useless. You guys don't have the common decency to make them work properly. A bit taken back by the way she approached me, but I remain calm. Me, the store has an automatic switch and it can be opened for you by pressing the button that's on either side of the door. EB, I don't care. These doors should have sensors and open for me. That's ridiculous. Speaking of which, I came down here to talk to you about the parking. Cringe inside. Me, sure, what do you need? EB, I start work fairly early in the morning, so my mind isn't always the clearest. I have a handicap placard for my vehicle, which is a big Suburban. When I park in the handicap spot, I'd like to park halfway within the line so I have enough room to get out of my car. Is that going to be a problem? Now, folks, let me prepare you for the rage I felt inside. I truly, honestly feel for those who are physically or mentally impaired. I'm very happy that we have policies in place to allow people to work as comfortably as possible with their conditions. But nothing irks me more when those very same people take full-blown advantage of these policies and decide to rub it in your face. I'm the security officer here, and I do not work for this call center. I work for the private security company who hired me, so a lot of what I say or do will only be judged and evaluated by my company. Parking spaces have white lines for a reason. They're not just a guideline. You must park within these lines or I will tow you. Me. Yes, that will be a problem. As per the contract you signed when you began your employment here, you adhered to the rules and regulations passed down by this company. Part of those rules state you abide by the parking rules. Those rules state that you cannot obstruct any parking spaces or park outside of the lines. This can and will result in a tow. EB gives me this horrified look of anger and confusion. EB, really? You can't be serious. I've always parked like this and it's never been a problem. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we simply ask all employees to park correctly, and there will never be an issue. EB limped off into the sunset, and from then on constantly gave me dirty looks anytime she saw me. She also continued her refusal of using the handicap button for doors and made a scene every time when she had to open them herself. Oh, and bonus story, EB decided she'd take a step further and park in our handicap spot without a placard anymore. She thought she won the war until one day she limped out to an empty parking spot. There is nothing more satisfying than putting some entitled a-hole in their place. The toe is the icing on the cake. And our last story. Cops took a veteran to the hospital against his will. A little over a month ago, my wife told me she wants a divorce. I was incredibly sad and alone, and I wanted someone to tell me it's going to be all right, so I called the Veterans Crisis Line. They asked a whole bunch of questions about suicide and just kept on asking about it, so eventually I told them that this isn't what I wanted and I was going to call someone else. They called the cops. I had 4 police cars and 7 police officers come and get me. I was taken to the hospital in handcuffs, where I was kept in handcuffs for about 2 hours. Eventually, a doctor came and asked me if I was suicidal. I explained that I wasn't. I was just sad. He said, "Okay, good to go," and sent me on my way. That was literally it. I didn't get medicine. I didn't get anything. I didn't even want to be there, especially in handcuffs. And now the hospital is trying to collect $681.56 from me for the hospital stay. It was not my choice to go to the hospital, and I feel like it's incredibly unfair that I have to pay for this when I didn't even get treated, with the exception of being treated like a criminal. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.